Welcome back to Spotlight with Kat Siggers, me, myself. So a lot has happened since we last had our interviews. I have been on vacation, which has been amazing. I went over to Canada to see my best friend from California State Arts. It was really great. It was long overdue. I haven't seen her in like 6 years, something like that. So we finally made the trip happen. I went over. She lives in Montreal, and if you've not visited, I highly, highly recommend. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous city. I also went up to Quebec City as well, which was another very like Parisian vibes. Really, really lovely. I'm sure you're all dying to know about how my paddleboarding is going. I'm sure you're ready for a paddleboarding update. So it was the weekend before my birthday. So this was about 6 weeks ago now. I went out paddleboarding and it was all fine. It was great. I was standing up on the board and I was, we went really far. We probably went 40 minutes in one direction, and then it was obviously 40 minutes back. Um So I was doing great. I was having the time of my life thinking, yeah, I'm absolutely getting this. And then there was like a almost like a slalom, right? There was like it's sort of like, just weaved round. And I was fine around the first bend, fine around the second bend. On the third bend, there was a big tree bush thing that was like just sticking out. And I lost control of the board and ended up just going straight into this tree. And there was like this tree stump. Honestly, it was like the size of that. Like it was huge, just sticking out. And I went directly into that on my leg. Oh my God. It was so painful. And at first, it did not look like anything. It was like just like a tiny little like graze, like tiny little bit of a bruise. By I'd say the third day, it looked like I had been in a full-blown car crash. I had a massive, like literally the inside of my leg was just like black. It was completely black. And I still have a bruise there now and a little bit of a hard lump. I'm not trying to deter you guys from paddleboarding, but I would say, or maybe it's me, I don't know, maybe I'm clumsy. But I would say do it with caution, be careful. And everyone was saying to me, why didn't you just put your not a fin, your stick, your whatever you row with. God, I can't remember now. Why don't you just put that out to stop you from falling? And I was like, oh yes, that would have been a great idea. But when I panic, I just sort of in my head, it's like blah, 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 just like goes like silent and like I cannot think. And so yeah, just went straight headfirst into this tree. So I had a nice big bruise and lump on my leg for my birthday, which was great. But I've recovered. I can't say I've been paddleboarding since, although the weather's been terrible here in the UK lately. It is just the beginning of September, and it honestly it feels like autumn. I know you guys in the US are probably like, yeah, we wish that was like that. Like we wish we had cooler weather, but honestly, you don't. You really don't. I have been uploading a load of content to TikTok. So in my career, of course, I'm a presenter, but I'm also a voice actor and I'm also an actor, which is why I absolutely love speaking to the guests on our show. So I have been uploading quite a few videos onto TikTok, talking about acting, talking about voice acting. I also do characters. And then I've done one that has gone, I would say, semi-viral. I've got like 2 million views on it. I don't know if you guys know it, it's like the Jet2 holiday advert. And that one has done really, really well, which I was really surprised at. But yeah, I have jumped into the world of content creation because I feel like that's what every entertainer needs to do nowadays. So that's kind of what's going on with me. But enough about me. Today, we are talking to An actor you will absolutely know. He was in House MD as Dr. Chris Taub. He was in Colony as Proxy Snyder. And most recently, he was in Star Wars, the Ahsoka series. It is, of course, the wonderful Peter Jacobson. Hello, Peter. It's lovely to have you on the show today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good. You're so welcome. It's our pleasure. Our pleasure. So I'm just going to dive into the questions. I'd love to know a little bit about your background. So I know you grew up in Chicago and you studied at Brown and Juilliard,
Mhm.
but I'd love to know what drew you to acting in the first place.
Um, Even before college, I had the bug. Pretty
Mhm.
much through grade school and in high school, I was a theater kid, although also a soccer kid. Went to a small school so I could swing both. Nobody was too good at one or the other. So I was able to somewhat succeed in both. And then when I was at Brown, I really got drawn into the theater crowd,
Mhm.
theater life there. There was so much going on. It was such a great place to be. There are so many people now who are in the industry with me, and people I
Yeah.
know that I went to school with who are working and doing great. And it was just a wonderful life of theater for 4 years. And then in the class ahead of me were three kids who applied to and got into Juilliard. So they had this, that, which is crazy given how few people they have in their classes. So suddenly it was like my junior year of Brown, there was all this Juilliard talk, and I didn't really know. I wasn't really thinking ahead in my life. I wasn't thinking, oh, I know I want to be an actor. I suspected, but I wasn't majoring in theater. I was majoring in political science, maybe law school. Probably I would try acting. I wasn't really sure, but suddenly I was like, wait a minute, these guys could do it. I'm going to now go ahead and continue studying it, not just to kill time and avoid being a grown up, which is part of it. It was mostly that I was thinking, all right, yeah, this sounds like a great thing to actually be serious and study it, because as much as I was doing it at Brown, it's not a conservatory. And so I wound up auditioning and getting into Juilliard. And the next 4 years, I'm in New York in an incredibly intense environment, really honing in on this is what I want to do. And I was really grateful to have that experience. It was, alternately fabulous and horrible. Generally, I really loved it and I'm grateful for it. But I also, it was 4 full years of training. The fourth year was really more of a rep season to sort of present you to the theater world in New York. And but still, I was 26 years old when I got out of school, and then embarked on my career at but 26 that's pretty late age to start living your life. But it was a great time.
Well, yeah, and it was also your path, you had to figure
Sure.
out what it was you wanted to do as
Yeah, I
well,
often get
like
asked, what do you have to go to graduate school? Do you need to, if I'm in college or high school, do I need to do a BFA or an MFA program to be a successful actor? There is no answer to that. For me, as you pointed out, it just was my path. I felt like I wanted to be in New York. First I got in, so I had that option, and it just felt like it was what I needed at that time in my life and what felt right.
Mm.
You start this career in so many different ways. People start young, old. They just don't need training. What is training really? I mean, I know what I got out of Juilliard, but I don't think it made me an actor. You are an actor or you're not. It can refine
Mm.
you or not. And for me, it was just the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to know, like, is there anything from your training at Juilliard that you now always bring into the roles, or have you kind of um, developed your own sort of method and way of approaching roles?
Well, essentially, I learned how to direct myself, which is sort of what you're saying in
Mm.
a general way. I didn't really have much of an idea of what my own process was. I knew I sort of dived in by instinct in all the plays I had done. But then when you're in a place like Juilliard, they're really breaking you down and saying, okay, this isn't just a random experience. What kind of intellectual, emotional,
Mm.
spiritual choices are you making? Physical choices, for sure, are you making about this character? How are you approaching the text? How are you approaching the scene? I didn't really know how to act in a way. So the number one thing I got from Juilliard that still stays with me and always will with it, I learned how to direct myself. And my first 7 years or so out of school were basically in New York doing theater, and theater is a much more direct actor-director relationship. That's the director is everything in a way, and it defines so much of your experience developing a character and putting on a show. Once I transitioned to TV and film, especially TV, the director is very important, but it really does sort of slide into the background from the writing, and frankly, however many millions of dollars it costs them to shoot an episode of a show in 7 or 8 or 9 days, that's the priority. You got to come prepared on your own, either as a regular. If I have 5 years on House, and even as a regular, I had to show up prepared for every scene, or even if I'm just doing a one-day guest spot on a show where I don't know anybody and they don't know me, I really got to show up prepared. So, and either way, you don't ever have more than nobody in TV has the luxury of the kind of rehearsal that you have in theater. Sometimes you get zero. In fact, I think a lot of the times you get zero. You're just like, okay, hi, nice to meet you. Let's go. Everything you learn as an actor at Juilliard and anywhere as a theater actor, that runs completely counter to every instinct you have as an artist who's creating a character in a scene. It's like, no, it's about figuring it out and talking and working on it and getting it right and trying and failing and trying this and that. I mean, you don't get to do that. If anything, maybe 20 minutes on House, because it was a big successful thing. We had the time, and with somebody like Hugh running, really setting the tone, the work was so important. So we had the luxury of taking more time to rehearse. Some shows you get that, some shows you don't. So that, all that being said, being able to direct myself and do the work on my own or on the side with my fellow actors without a director there was a critical skill that I'll never not use. And I got that, I think, in grad school. I don't know that I would have gotten that as specific and honed, and I wouldn't be as confident in it if I had not been at Juilliard. And also one other quick one, the classical work, the Shakespeare work. It's my great, I just love it. And, the opportunity to be in a Shakespeare play and to sort of know what you're doing, that was a big part of my career as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I think with Shakespeare as well, like if you can do Shakespeare, you can do any modern text. Like you really can. It makes it feel like a walk in the park, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything's different, but Shakespeare is a unique, what I learned was just the miracle of what he did, in that he wrote, or supposedly wrote, 37 plays and all these sonnets that we see. It is living thought. It's not, the American theater experience, our skills are in the internal work, the method that we do, so we come prepared emotionally, and it's a lot of seeing through our eyes what the emotion is there, and it's not so focused on the language. Shakespeare has given us, I'm sitting here lecturing on Shakespeare. He's given us
you're fine. I love it.
A map, a GPS of thought, the character's thought. It's happening while you speak, as opposed to thinking it and considering it. Subtext doesn't exist in Shakespeare as it does in American theaters. It's all right there in the text, and that is when you get on that train and you're going and it's working, it's like nothing else.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. It's a pleasure to work on Shakespeare, because it's sort of, there's a freedom in it, because like you say, a lot of the time you have to internalize things, whereas you can kind of externalize with it, and you can be big and you can be bold with it, which when we're working on TV and film and even theater, sometimes it's so much more smaller. It's the micro movements.
That's right. Really Shakespeare it wants to be as big as it can. That's not to say that it's always over dramatic, but what he's writing about and what everybody's going through are the greatest human emotions. The stuff is huge, and there's the space to fill that. The other way, I did not learn the skill that at Juilliard, I did not learn the skills for TV that I think and film that you need, which are basically you have to be able to really internalize. Sometimes I just feel like show up and mumble and that'll do it. I mean, I'm really simplifying, but that's the contrast between the two. And
Yeah.
Juilliard was much more about the theater training.
Yeah, I got you. Really interesting. You mentioned House, and obviously I can't speak to you without speaking about House, right?
No, you cannot.
So no, right?
Think about it. Don't even try.
Good job I have it in my notes. You're like, I'm leaving the interview.
Yeah, I'm out of here. If you don't talk about House, I'm out.
So you joined season 4 in that kind of like survival style hiring arc. What was that experience like for you as an actor?
Really still to this day, one of the craziest experiences of my life. I mean, there was just the excitement and the thrill of knowing I had a shot to be on what was at that point already a mammoth hit. But to be, normally you audition, you know how many episodes you're doing, and once in a blue moon, they'll be like, hey, we really love you and we're going to work you into this show forever. That really rarely happens. But this was set up as, all right, you got 9 episodes. And it's going to be a survivor game along the way. As we see it, as you all saw, it was at the end of each episode was Hugh with like the torch and you're fired. And it was obviously we were finding out before the audience was, but while we were shooting, we were essentially for those 4 months, we didn't know who was going to be standing at the end and who wasn't. I did know that's not true. There was that whole like classroom of people in the beginning. But in reality, there were, I think, 5 of us who knew that we were contracted for 9 episodes. So we knew who the final 5 were. So maybe that's not as exciting as I just laid out, but it was still pretty ridiculous and weird and not usual to be shooting all that time knowing that, for the last 2 months, you're going to be essentially vying for your job. And if you're like me, I was early in my TV years-ish. So I'm every actor, especially early in their career, I would say 60% of it is the craft and 40% is hoping you don't get fired and wondering whether or not people like you. That's, we're actors. That's what we do. We like to think it's all about the craft, but I defy any actor who's not thinking about that stuff in some capacity at any point. And that was now 15 years ago, my God, almost actually 18 years ago when I started. And I was younger. And so to be in something that was about being fired or not, I already was carrying enough emotional baggage and anxiety about it that it wasn't helpful. And at the same time, Olivia and Eddie and Annie and Cal and those were the 5 finalists. We sort of had this bond in the weirdness of it. So in a way, it's sort of, we all soothed each other because we were like, this is nuts. We really love each other after all this time. We so want the other to succeed, but we're competing. That doesn't usually happen. And it was thrilling, anxiety inducing, and ultimately just a lovely experience.
Yeah, such a unique experience to have of like in real life, sort of feeling what the character felt. Like it was actually happening to you.
Totally.
And what was that feeling like when you knew you were staying on?
It was great. I was like, whoa, I just hit some kind of lottery here. Instant relaxation on that front, on the not getting fired front, which is always a good kind of relaxation to have.
Always great.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to know they're not being fired today? But just to know that I was at least for the foreseeable future going to be part of this show. And after all those months, I had really gotten to know everybody, and I felt like the writers got to know me, and that's part of why my character succeeded. Taub felt like a real person with a legitimate, space in that story, and with those other characters, and the relationship between Taub and House continued on to be developed as something really specific and lovely, and not competitive really, but I'm the oldest of all those newbies, and I was always getting under his skin, and he thought he particularly loved to give me a hard time, that's just gold. I mean, that's dramatic, comic, writing, acting gold when there's that tension between two characters. So the writers got to know me, and I felt more and more comfortable. And then when they said you're in, it was just lovely. I mean, it was just like, okay, I'm not buying a house in LA, but I'm gonna enjoy some stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And your character was so interesting because he, he was super funny, but I'm not being funny, but he was a flawed man.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
again, what's better for an actor to play than flaws?
Well, exactly. And did you was it all there in the writing for you, or was there any of your own development to help really ground that character?
Well, I do think it's a dance, and one of the joys of so rare and such a blessing to be on something over a period of time in television. I mean, again, the theater experience, you have, a month, 5 weeks to be discussing that and working on that, but the play is there, and you're putting all that work into it beforehand to fit into a fixed product, which is the play that's already written. The beauty of being on a TV show over seasons is that dance with the writers and the actors gets to go on, and they can decide to do anything with me, and they really did. But essentially it's them. They have an idea. I remember the very first audition for that character. It was pretty clear. I mean, the show was a hit because the writing was great and the acting was great, and he was a phenomenon. But the writing, even in the first audition, it was very clear who this character was, which is always helpful to any actor, because you can make things even more specific. And but it was on the page. And then, but of course, if they cast anybody else, it would have been a different character. The essentials the basics might have been there, but it was the Peter Jacobson version of this totally flawed man, and so I got to bring my comic chops to that, and all my flaws, the tonnage of flaws that I bring in. As again, over time, you're socializing with the writers, you're laughing. I loved them. They were just a fabulous group of. Those are the old days. There was like 15 staff writers, and they were on set half the time, and the writers' room was right there, a few yards away, and I was in and out of their offices, and we really got along great, and they really got me, and I got them. And I think that's why the character felt so grounded and so real, was because they were knowing me, and I was helping them give me more.
Yeah, and it's always great when you can have that collaboration in developing that character, because you don't always get that. Like
oh my God, I would say you rarely get that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why, again, 5 seasons I did of that show. By the 3rd season, you're in a groove, and you just never know where it'll go. And the best TV shows that go for those seasons, you just watch the best characters, they evolve. I mean, they really, really evolve. And that's what's exciting for any audience. Anybody who loves a character wants to see them go unpredictable places.
Yeah, absolutely. On that journey and seeing where it's going to take them, for sure.
Right.
Did you have a favorite storyline that you were able to play out during? Did you have a favorite storyline?
Well, it was so funny because by the end I had I mean, just the struggles in the struggles in the marriage, and the way that Hugh would insert himself was just there was so much drama and comedy in that, and I think they finessed that so well for me. So on over seasons, that was the arc that I loved, and then the sort of the weird, bizarro ending of me having multiple children, and but still always trying to figure out what my emotional life outside of the office was supposed to be, and how I would bring that to the office, and how Hugh brought stuff to me that made that conflict rise up in the office. And again, that was the beauty of Hugh's character, was that there's nothing he wouldn't bring into the office, and into the diagnosis room, and that was just. Everything was fodder. So that on the long term was the storyline that I loved. But then the mini storylines along the way, I really, really appreciated, were that and they all stem from the bigger story about the character, which is that he's not the most emotionally intelligent human being, Taub, and his a surliness to him and a gruffness to him and a
Mm.
stubbornness to him that I also got to see episode to episode play out. And some of my favorite episodes were those, like the one when Cutner kills himself. It was a huge moment for the show and for all of us when when he was leaving the show and they wrote him out the way they did. And then Hugh's character goes off on a whole tangent from that, which was brilliantly written. But the way they had Taub in that particular episode, when we learn of his death, the fight and the cover and the emotional stubbornness of Taub in that episode, everybody's dealing with the death of their colleague, and I'm the one who's sticking to the case. I remember it was Meatloaf. May he also rest in peace. And it was him and the character of his wife. These two people were dying, and for some reason that they had Taub be the only one who was really staying on the case. And yet I was staying on it in this incredibly obviously hiding and unavailable, unwilling to even look at the tragedy that had just struck until the very end of the episode when he breaks down. And so that's like a little mini, 42-minute journey, very intense journey of what writ large was so wonderful in playing Taub. I really, really love that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, saying about how it's almost like that internal fight of like, no, I've got to stay on the job, but I'm also feeling these things, no, push them down. And I think I don't know who said, I think maybe Michael Caine said it is the most powerful thing a man can do on screen is try not to cry. Right? I think he said something like that. And it's kind of the same thing. Like you're trying to cover up your emotions, which makes it actually more interesting for the audience to watch.
What's more human than how we struggle moment to moment, day to day, just to move through our lives, either be it a huge tragedy or the most annoying thing that's happening in front of you. We're in situations where we have to manage that, and everybody does it their way. And in writing a TV show, obviously everything becomes elevated because that's what makes TV entertaining. But if that is still the task of every character, the writing is good enough to see them have to manage themselves relative in relation to the world, that's great TV.
Oh, definitely. Let's move on to Star Wars. So we know that you recently appeared in Ahsoka, and were you a big Star Wars fan growing up?
Oh my God. I mean, I was when A New Hope was released, it was 77. I was 12. So I was like, talk about a sweet spot. And then, of course, back then, it blew everybody's collective minds. It was a social event because you were in the theater when Han Solo knocks Darth Vader out of Luke Skywalker's way, and then Luke Skywalker explodes Death Star. Those two moments one was in a massive cheer followed by an even more massive cheer with however many hundreds of people you were with. That just didn't happen in life. It was like, unless you're like at a football game or something, but never in a movie theater. So suddenly it was a communal experience. I'm 12 years old. I've never seen anything sci-fi like that. Nobody had. And then, so I'd come out of the theater literally ringing in a way that only an adolescent can. And then I got to wait 2 years and for Empire Strikes Back. And then I got to wait another 2 years for Return of the Jedi. So and by then I was a senior in high school. And I remember it was the night before Return of the Jedi opened. I stayed up all night with my friend. We went to the 2 a.m. showing. It was showing around the clock at the movie theater, and afterwards it was too late to go to bed for school the next day, so we were playing football under the street lights on my street in front of my house. So those kinds of like intense, weird life moments are how I related to Star Wars. And then I have a son who, when the new ones, I guess 99-ish, somewhere in the late 90s, the new ones came out, and then suddenly everything is accessible on TV all the time. And my son becomes a huge Star Wars fan. He was born in the early 2000s, so it had been reborn. There's all this connectivity with Legos. I mean, a whole new world of connectivity between product placement and toys, and he can watch it whenever he wants, and I'm watching him with him. So it's always been in my life, and I had actually even written a letter First, it was Carl Weathers. May he also rest in peace. This is sad. The great people to work with, these wonderful actors and
Yeah.
gentlemen. I had the pleasure of working with him on the show called Colony,
Okay.
well before The Mandalorian. And he did a bunch of episodes on the show, Colony. And I just love Carl. He was just the sweetest man. And then he was on The Mandalorian, and just he was directing episodes, and it was so great. And I was like, God, I would love for my son and I to have a Star Wars, like how cool would it be for me to get on a Star Wars show? So I wrote Carl and I said, hey, like, any advice? And he goes, write the casting director, write Jon Favreau, who I don't know at all, and let them know, you've got sort of a career here, you can, they might know who you are. And so I did that. I wrote a letter to the production office sort of explaining how much I wanted to do it and how meaningful it was for me to sort of watch these generations with my son. And then like months later, because I don't know what their schedule was, I literally out of the blue, they were like, yeah, you're going to play this character on Ahsoka. And I was like, oh. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it was like late in the COVID time, but everybody was still very anxious. And there's so much secrecy around Star Wars that I wasn't able to get my son onto the set with me onto the volume and get as much immediate access as I was for, but he was still really thrilled and excited, and that's still a wonderful thing. And it was such a joy to shoot it, and now to know that I'm, as my son says, I'm actually in the canon. Min Weaver is there, and whether or not he shows up again ever in the future, we don't know. But I was there on the very first day of shooting of the very first episode of Ahsoka, and I had the very first line of the day. So it was like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni made all these great speeches, and we were all just ready to go. And then I had to open my mouth and not blow it. So it's very nerve-wracking, but really thrilling.
Yeah, really, really nerve-wracking. That's a lot of pressure, right?
Yeah, but it was so cool. I mean, just the, now, I mean, part of me was hoping when I first got it, I was like, oh, we're going to go to Morocco and film in the desert. And it's going to, because how they used to do it, I love to travel and travel with work. But then I was like, oh no, I'm going to be going to Manhattan Beach in Los Angeles. But this thing that Jon Favreau has developed, which is the volume, which I think it really found its legs, as it were, with The Mandalorian. It's all right there, and it saves everybody a lot of money for travel. And the technology is so amazing because it's this massive screen, and they project everything onto it. So there's that in Ahsoka. I'm at one point giving Ahsoka and the senator a tour of my shipyard, and we're in one of those speeders, and they're just bouncing us up and down with sticks, and everything that we're passing is on the screen, a huge screen. And I was like, will I be able to act this? And they just asked me if I would get seasick, and I said, no, I don't. And then there we go. And it was like I was there when they said cut, because it was all moving. I was stationary, but everything was moving past me. It was so realistic that I absolutely 100% didn't feel the difference as an actor. It was like, oh, here, it's all just right there. It's, size, perspective, everything. It's amazing.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That is like out of this world. Like,
Truly.
I mean, yeah, truly, pardon the pun. But that is the technology, I suppose, that has advanced from the first lot of Star Wars, A New Hope, through to now is poles apart. But what do you think, I suppose, obviously being a long-time fan of Star Wars, what do you think is like the message of Star Wars? Has it stayed the same?
I mean, I think that it has ultimately, because just its longevity and the intensity with which it goes on and the generations. The first one was an explosion of entertainment, and yet it was so simple. It was, first of all, it was about a father and a son. It was about, most importantly, like, who are we in the universe and what is our power? What are we capable of? And and as humans, like, I remember just wondering, what does the Force mean? And to trust the Force is an endless proposition for us forever as humans, to trust our instincts, our better judgment, the energy of our connectivity between others. I believe in all that stuff as a citizen of the planet, and my experience thus far with friends, family, and just watching the world happen. I believe there's more than just what we see, and Star Wars is about that and our personal journeys along those lines. That's endless. I mean, so I think that that's the driving force of Star Wars. You can tell any story as long as the characters are well written. As long as that stuff is underneath, it's always going to be fascinating for more generations to come. I mean, look, in today's world, everybody knows how to overdo something and saturate it, and there will be ebbs and flows of popularity, I think. But if they're even slightly smart, which they really are, they'll keep turning out great stories, and I think it could go on forever.
Yeah. Oh, I think it will. I think a large amount of the population would be very sad if it didn't.
Yeah.
So
I mean, when
I think they have to.
Doing the convention, just the interaction with the fans who, I mean, I come in like the second or third episode of Ahsoka, and I'm not around for long. But people were like, "Oh, I love the show. I loved your character. Let's talk about Star Wars. Let's talk about the world. Let's talk about Ahsoka." It's just lovely to be involved in the energy of it. That even if I'm in it minimally, that people can
definitely. I remember Diana talking about that, because I know you guys know each other, and that was one of the things she said. But it was the fans keep her going through it. She loves going to conventions because she gets to meet so many enthusiastic people that love the show, that just are dreamy people who just have so much love for it. So I think it's a really great almost collective that Star Wars have made, of really just lovely, genuine, kind people.
Oh God, they're the sweetest. Everybody there's just a lot of love.
Yeah. And isn't that a beautiful thing, especially in today's world?
Oh my God. It was just, at first I was like, oh, I'm going to be in this convention. It's going to be 9 hours of, what could that be like? But, I was tired at moments, but just the interconnectivity was always energizing.
Will we see, I mean, I know you can't say anything, but okay, I'll phrase it like this. Would you like us to see Min Weaver again? Because we know he's been arrested, right? We know he's gone to prison. But would you like him to reprise his role?
I would love for Min Weaver to come back. That being said, it's not, of course, my decision. And I'm not saying one way or another whether or not he's going to be or not, but as an actor, as a human, I would love for Min Weaver to come back. And I just feel like they established him, or I got to play him in such a way I think that he's a character. I mean, there's something there, and that's why I enjoyed doing it. Wasn't, I like to play a character that has levels and layers, and I feel like there's room for him to grow as an interesting person in the story.
I do as well. I do, because I think he came. He had a story behind him already. Like when he was introduced to us. And so. And now he's driven by his investors and by money, essentially. But there was so much behind that I think there's legs for it, and I have everything crossed for you, and I'm sure everyone at the Spotlight family do as well. So I really, really hope so. Just a few final questions for you then, Peter. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Such a good question. Just to manage expectations, that when I got out of school, or just manage my stories. When I got out of school, I was starting my career, and actors start their careers, like, as we discussed earlier, from a million different vantage points. And you start, and I just had a lot of hope, which is great. But I had a lot of stories about how I thought it should go. I wanted it to go. That's the expectation. You know, whether or not I wasn't certain of anything, but I knew what I wanted. And so I think most of the actors I know, we talk about the frustration that comes in the business that is just geared to knock you down. And because my story of how it should be or how much I wanted it to be was so set, there was a lot of frustration and disappointment. It took me a long time to relax and enjoy. And I'm older now, and I've reached a certain level of work and success, and the sky is always the limit. I feel like I'm always looking for more and sort of frustrated because I want more. But I've learned how to manage that frustration, that expectation, and those stories about how it's supposed to be. Because people in this business will tell you, agents, everybody, you're this kind of person. You're going to work in these kinds of roles. This isn't happening now because you're this years old. Nobody knows. The great screenwriter William Goldman said it best, nobody knows anything. And it's, might sound trite at this point, but it is the truism of our business. Nobody knows anything. And so how do we as sensitive humans manage that kind of career? You don't know anything. I have no idea if Minweaver is going to come back. It would make me so happy. So I have a story that I wanted to, I have an expectation, I have a desire. You just made me miserable because you talked about how great it be. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was like, oh my God, I've offended him.
But no, I love to talk about it. And, I want that to happen. And that's what acting is all along, because it's so competitive and it's so difficult. So I'm very long-winded. So what would I tell my younger self? I'd say, relax, let it flow as best you can. You're wired the way you're wired, Peter, which is not in a mellow way, but really breathe through this whole thing and just let it flow. If you're not an easy flower, it's a tough business.
Yeah, well, it's a tough business whether you flow or not, really.
Correct. Absolutely. So it's about what you do here then,
Exactly. And you mentioned that there's, roles and hopes you have for your career. Can you let us in on maybe one or two of those roles or projects you'd like to work
on? Well, there's so much great TV out there. I mean, there's so many shows that I love that I'd love to hop onto again or be part of developing a new one. Specifically, so any great new TV story that's showing up. The writing is so good, and people are taking such great risks now. And anything like a show like Succession or Slow Horses, these are just wonderful. The Crown, these are just fabulously written, produced stories, and so I'm always hoping to land in one of those. It was theater. I've always had a burning desire to play Iago or Richard III, and I might even be getting. I mean, I know I'm old now, but I can take some of this out. In terms of projects that are happening here, I live in Utah. Interestingly enough.
Oh, do you?
Since COVID, actors I know are everywhere because the audition process is remote.
Yes.
So I've done a lot of work here locally, and the tone and projects here are different than other places. It's more Western, it's more cowboy, it's more, there's a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff, the vast land.
Well, because of how vast Utah is, Yeah.
So I've had an opportunity to shoot. Right now, I just finished shooting a story, this sort of post-apocalyptic TV series that's going to come out and play a role that I would never really get to play. I play sort of a religious cult leader. Somehow in Utah, I'm getting a crack at different kinds of roles. Now I'm always going to LA to work, in New York, and wherever the work is, I'll go. But here at home, what is now home, there's a really interesting new vibe for me, which I'm really enjoying.
Oh, wow. Well, you have to let us know when that's out because we'd love to see it. I'm weirdly fascinated by cults and cult leaders, and I find it fascinating because it's like, how how do you have, I mean, it's people with magnetism and charisma, and to gain that following, I love it. So please
Yeah.
let us know the details
Okay.
of
Yeah.
that.
No, I mean, that's the show is
Um,
about a lot more, but my character is that guy, and so it's a
yeah,
side story, but absolutely, yeah, it's a fascinating. I mean, there's documentaries galore if you really like that
sure.
stuff, and it's
I
certainly been
do.
a fun character to play.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. You've been an absolute pleasure to talk
Thank you.
to.
It was really
And you're welcome back anytime.
great. Please have me. I love it. Thanks a lot.